Biden and Netanyahu spoke Thursday by phone, days after Israeli airstrikes killed 7 food aid workers in Gaza and added a layer of complication in the leaders' increasingly strained relationship. Today is Friday, April 5th, 2024, and this is the Dunkley Report. President Joe Biden has told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu future U.S. support for the Gaza war depends on new steps to protect civilians and aid workers. Biden and Netanyahu spoke Thursday by phone days after Israeli airstrikes killed 7 food aid workers in Gaza and added a layer of complication in the leaders' increasingly strained relationship. The White House says the Democratic president told Netanyahu an immediate ceasefire is essential. Netanyahu's office says his security cabinet has approved a series of our immediate step to increase the flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza. The leaders' conversation came as the World Central Kitchen called for an independent investigation into the Israeli strikes that killed some of the group's staff members. Former President Donald Trump offered a tough message to Israel over its war against Hamas on Thursday, urging the country to get it over with. In an interview with conservative radio host Hugh Hewitt, Trump said that Israel is absolutely losing the PR worry and called for a swift resolution to the bloodshed. Get it over with, and let's get back to peace and stop killing people. And that's a very simple statement, Trump said. They have to get it done. Get it over with, and get it over with fast. Because we have to. You have to get back to normalcy and peace. More than 600 British jurists are calling on the government to suspend arms sales to Israel. The move adds to pressure on Prime Minister Rishi Sunak after the deaths of 3 UK aid workers in an Israeli strike. In an open letter to Sunak, published late Wednesday, the lawyers and judges said the UK could be complicit in your grave breaches of international law if it continues to ship weapons. Signatories include 3 retired justices from the UK Supreme Court. Britain is just one of Israel's long-standing allies whose governments are under growing pressure to halt weapons exports because of the toll of the 6-month-old war in Gaza. New data from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives shows that 68,000 illegally trafficked firearms in the U.S. came through unlicensed dealers who aren't required to perform background checks over a 5-year report. The report released Thursday was the first in-depth analysis of firearm trafficking investigations in more than 20 years. Justice Department officials say 54% of the illegally trafficked firearms in the U.S. between 2017 and 2021 were from unlicensed dealers. The second highest share of firearm trafficking cases investigated by ATF was straw purchases, when someone buys a gun for a person who can't get it legally themselves. An early spring nor'easter is hammering the Northeast with heavy snow, rain, and high winds, with some northern areas expected to get up to 2 feet of snow. Hundreds of thousands of homes and businesses remained without power Thursday night from West Virginia to Maine. Police say a falling tree in a New York City suburb killed a woman late Wednesday afternoon. Dozens of flights to and from area airports have been canceled or delayed, and schools and government offices are closed in many towns. The storm comes as several other states continue to clean up from tornadoes and other intense weather that was blamed for at least 3 deaths earlier in the week. The No Labels group says it won't field a presidential candidate in November after strategists for the bipartisan organization failed to attract a high-profile centrist willing to seize on the widespread dissatisfaction with President Joe Biden and Donald Trump. No Labels CEO Nancy Jacobson said in a statement Thursday that the responsible course of action is for us to stand down. The decision further cements a general election rematch between the Democratic incumbent and the former president. Many voters do not have favorable views of Biden and Trump, a dynamic that No Labels had sought to address. Anti-vaccine activist Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the most prominent independent candidate in the 2024 presidential race. A federal judge has refused to throw out the classified documents prosecution against Donald Trump. U.S. District Judge Aileen Cannon rejected a defense argument that the case should be tossed because he was entitled as a former president to retain the records after he left office. Lawyers for Trump had cited a 1978 statute known as the Presidential Records Act in arguing that he was permitted to designate records from his time in office as personal and take them with him when he left the White House. Prosecutors on special counsel. Jack Smith's team vigorously opposed that argument, saying the statute had no relevance in a case concerning classified documents. Cannon sided with the government in a 3-page order. The attack on a Moscow concert hall, the bloodiest assault on the Russian soil in 2 decades, appears to be setting the stage for an increasingly harsh response by President Vladimir Putin after his tightly orchestrated electoral landslide last month. 4 suspects in the attack appeared in court, showing signs of brutal treatment while in custody. Grisly video showing some of their treatment was put on social media without any critical response from authorities. A top Kremlin official called for sending hit squads to kill Ukrainian officials if Kyiv's involvement in the attack is proven. Senior lawmakers are urging the restoration of capital punishment, which was abolished in Russia decades ago. John Staley did a masterful job guiding a young South Carolina team back to the Final Four, undefeated for the 2nd straight season. Staley had to replace her entire starting lineup from last season's team that made the national semifinals and pushed all the right buttons to have the team go 36-0 and earn the number 1 ranking most of the season. The Gamecocks coach was honored as the AP Women's Basketball Coach of the Year for the 2nd time. She received 27 votes from the 35-member national media panel that votes on the AP Top 25 each week. The judge has ruled that the federal trial of 4 former police officers charged with civil rights violations in the beating death of Tyre Nichols will be held in Memphis. U.S. District Judge Mark S. Norris denied motions filed by defense attorneys for the former Memphis Police Department officers to move the trial out of the city or bring in a jury from elsewhere in Tennessee. They said it was necessary because of intense news media coverage and the public release of video related to the beating. Nichols died on January 10, 2023, 3 days after he was punched, kicked, and hit with a police baton after a traffic stop. The officers have pleaded not guilty to state and federal charges. Today's news has been reported by the Associated Press. This has been the World News for Friday, April 5th, 2024. Thanks again for joining us at the Dunkley Report.